invocation and national security exemption, it actually described a whole series of different low-touch technology to keep all of the various border lines open. I don't remember seeing any relation to any one contract or any 13.9 million. I know that in the response that PSPC provided, we actually limited in our response saying that their NIC would be valid for a 3-month period because, again, with the evolving pandemic, we did not want to give a long-term NSC that would create expectations or further contracting requirements.
Further to this, the contract in question required a document safeguarding capability security requirement that was not met by GC Strategies. This requirement was removed 14 months after the contract had been initiated. Why were security requirements put in place for a sole source contract that the contractor couldn't even meet?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm going to ask Mme Boulin to answer.
Merci beaucoup pour la question, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chairperson. It's important to make a distinction between a security clearance of an organisation or a staff member and capacity that is requested by an organisation. It's not necessary for an organisation to have that capacity at the moment of the awarding of the contract. When that capacity is required, when a contract is put in place, the organisation must have that capacity. So it's normal that a contract be awarded without that capacity being pre-verified by contract security, and otherwise there needs to be an amendment to the contract to withdraw that requirement because it's not necessary for GC Strategies to carry out their contract. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson. Thank you to the witnesses. Ms. Yip.
6 minutes, please.
Thank you. Ms. Reza, we appreciate you being ready to come to the first scheduled meeting when the meeting was canceled. So thank you for rescheduling to come again. When you are the signing authority for a contract with the client department, can you explain the division of responsibilities between what the client department does and what you do?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. These divisions of responsibility between the client department and the contracting authority are actually well documented in the Treasury Board policy on contract management, but I'm going to actually turn to Dominique, who will give us a good overview of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madame Deputy, and thank you. So in terms of the division and role responsibility, it's important to keep in mind that the client will define their requirement, their operational requirement. They define their budget. So basically, they're going to contact the procurement authority with a good or services that they want to procure in mind. And it's up for PSPC to provide an advice in terms of what is the process that is best suited for the procurement of, depending on the nature of the services. Is it a supply arrangement that is in place? Is it a standing offer? So to make sure that the client, and if this is beyond their client delegation, so that they can leverage our tool, so it allows for a process that is usually competitive, is streamlined, and we can also benefit from supply arrangements that do exist. So in terms of our role, we are the contracting authority, so we're going to make sure, for example, that things are within budget. We take care of the financial evaluation of the bids received. In terms of the technical evaluation, this is up to the client. So there's clearly role and responsibility that are spread between the client department and with the contracting authority, and oftentimes it's played by PSPC.
Okay, so just to be clear, does the PSPC have the authority to go through and verify the information being provided by client departments?
If I may, Mr. Chair, we certainly do, and this is something that has been truly reinforced since November 28 with our client department, and December 4th we sent directive to all our staff, making sure that we have also now a task authorization checklist that is very mandatory in terms of requesting information, and not necessarily checklists that's been provided by the client, but actually seeing copies of actual CVs, actual attestation of the resources that they give permission to use their name, claims, that their, for example, experience is an accurate representation. So all these things are now being double-checked by PSPC when we're using our authority.
Ms. Reza, as the Auditor General noted, PSPC did raise the issue and push back in the case of at least one contract that went to GC Strategies. Can you tell us more about that?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. In fact, I have our team has shared actually a package of information around that. But to describe that in more detail, you will see that there is an exchange of emails in terms of asking, as we just noted, the sole source justification is the responsibility of the department. So they created a sole source justification. The contracting authority pushed back and several times, looking to ensure that the information was accurate, that it was really clear that we had to be convinced that there was only one IT firm that could provide staff augmentation in this, looking at the timelines that were provided. So there's a whole series of steps where there was a challenge function at the DG level within CBSA to outline specifically what was required to be able to move forward.
Sorry, I did not hear your last sentence. I don't know if the mic didn't pick up.
Apologies. I just ended by saying that there was a whole series of steps that were outlined in the email to CBSA asking for further information to be able to document the file and to satisfy PSPC's challenge function on the sole source justification, the length of the contract, why they were not looking at different options. In emergency situations like we saw in the pandemic, while we weren't able to run full competitions, we kept defaulting to quick competitions of 5, 10, 15 days to try to ensure that we were using competitive tools.
And how did those quick competitions go?
Thank you very much for the question. The quick competitions worked very well across a broad range of commodities and PPE and various logistic pieces that we put in place.
What authority does PSPC have to reject a contract request from client departments?
Thank you very much for the question. I'm going to turn to Dominique for a technical answer.
So I think in terms of our authority, I think we have to be careful when we allow department to use our procurement instrument, whether it's a standing offer, supply arrangement. Our role is to play a challenge function, making sure that people do abide by the role of being open and fair and transparent procurement. This is an interesting question that you're raising. And to what extent can we say basically no to the client? Here, I think in the context of the pandemic, you have to remember the context of CBSA's employees. It was very difficult to have them at the border station. So all these elements would basically kind of make it a bit more challenging to play a challenge function back then. But I have to say that in the context of regular challenge function, eventually we're going to say no. And we've been saying no to clients in the past that they're not going to be able to leverage some of our procurement vehicle if they don't, for example, abide to the terms of condition of them. So.
Et voilà, thank you. That is the time for that segment. Maintenant, c'est Mr. Lemire. Bonjour. Vous avez 6 minutes.
You have 6 minutes, Mr. Lemire. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you to the witnesses for their reports in this important study. In the Auditor General's study, paragraph 151, we noted that Procurement Canada, as the central authority for contracting and procurement, initially called into question the decision of CBSA officials to propose and use sole source contracting for ArriveCan and proposed other alternative solutions such as a competitive process that would be shorter, 10 days for example, or contracting period that would be shorter as part of a non-competitive process. Now, in your opening remarks, you confirmed this state of affairs. So we know that Public Services and Procurement Canada challenged some of the CBSA's decisions with respect to ArriveCan, but we don't have access to those emails. In a previous correspondence, apparently emails can be recovered for a period of 30 days, and yet the Treasury Board Secretariat yesterday intimated that it would be a period of 6 months for the recovery of emails. Can you confirm either or, please?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you very much for your question. We'll have to go back and see what the policy is when it comes to retaining documentation. Yesterday, we shared emails with the clerk of the committee that were requested by committee members. Moreover, we still haven't received the emails that we asked at committee, and yet the Auditor-General already had those in her possession. Why is it taking so long to get those emails to us? And we'd remind you the role of elected officials to shed light on these issues. Parliamentarians play a central role when it comes to transparency of information, and this is crucial to us fulfilling our mandate. Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chairperson. We're doing our utmost. Normally it takes between a fortnight and 3 weeks to submit documents. We get them translated and then we send them through as soon as possible. We do our very best. I don't know if Dominique can tack on to that. Yes, indeed. Those documents are being translated. Some were tabled with the committee yesterday. We're acting very diligently, and we always do so when we receive such a request. Of course, translation takes time, but if those emails aren't tabled today, it'll be in the upcoming days. We only appeared here a couple of weeks back, and it takes time to get our hands on the emails and get the appropriate approvals, but they're on their way if they're not already with you. Question. Well, I'm glad to know that you're taking this seriously. It's absolutely crucial that we have access to these emails so that we understand what the contracting authorities did so that we can avoid a recurrence of this kind of situation. We know that this has been highly this has really been covered at length by the media. Have you had a crisis cell put in place? Where does the buck stop, and who should we be pointing the finger at when it comes to ArriveCAN?
Je vais commencer en français, mais peut-être je vais.
I'll start in French, and then perhaps I'll finish in English. We've reflected on that issue at length. During the pandemic, in the procurement department, we awarded about 16,000 contracts for a total value of $20 billion.
Period for $20 billion worth of procurement on PPE, on vaccine procurements, on logistics, with a workforce of approximately 1,000 employees and executives working in this field. We did our best to make sure that we had records, governance was taking place, that we were supporting a vast array of not only clients, but in this period of time that we're talking about, the provinces and territories turned toward us for assistance with their acquisitions for hospitals, spooling up logistic trains. So there was a lot of different pieces going on with the same workforce trying to meet a breadth of needs that were very specific. So in terms of how we normally do things, there are many different hands working on many different contracts. It is not a one-to-one relationship. We support all of our clients, and we try to provide that level of due diligence and framework that we put in place to ensure that the rules are followed for transparency and openness, and that there's best value in the procurement process. Je vais m'arrêter ici. Je ne sais pas si Dominique.
I'll stop there and I'll hand the floor to Dominique. Well, I don't know if you're referring specifically to ArriveCAN, but our department didn't have any contracts with respect to ArriveCAN, and it's important to clarify that. We provided IT services to the CBSA, but when it comes to crisis management, there was no ArriveCAN file in our department. So we provided, as I said, IT services to the CBSA. Well, one can't conclude that this contracting process was carried out properly, given the complexity of the ecosystem of the management of the borders. But did the government give you the tools you required to succeed? Did you have the leeway to succeed in this project from an IT standpoint? Thank you for the question. I think that would be a better question for the CBSA itself. There you have it. Your time is up.
It's MP Lidout. You